we all try to bargain. We all try to reason away things, and we draw a line in the sand. But that line is always going to get crossed, because ultimately that's life, right? We want to have control, and we don't have control of things in this life. And the pandemic is a perfect example of that. And it scares people. If the pandemic has taught us anything, it's that busyness, we can't be busy anymore. Life is just way too short. We need to make time for the things that matter. And if our inner voice, if our inner intuition, our inner gut is telling us we have to do something, and it's really tugging at us, don't walk away from that, because it's never going to go away. I think it's important for people to follow whatever their dream is, even if it's something on the side, even if they do it in little baby steps or small steps, and make sure you have the support behind you.
Our guest today has been featured on ABC and NBC. She's the host and creator of the Game On Glio, a highly rated podcast centering on education, resources, and real-life stories of those suffering brain cancer, grief, and loss. With several years' experience as a radio personality and host, she also has experience in television hosting, public speaking, writing, social media, and marketing. Her novel, Finding Morgan, has received 5-star reviews, along with her highly rated blog, Grace, Guidance, Gratitude, that speaks about her own journey as a young widow after the death of her husband, Michael. Welcome to the show, author, speaker, travelholic, humanitarian, and podcaster, Shannon Traphagen.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Shannon, thank you so much for coming to the show. We met recently, for anybody who's tuning in. It's not like we've known each other for years, but I do feel a strong connection with you, because one thing I appreciate when I meet someone is that you got real with me. You were willing to share and open up your story, and you connected with me after my interview with Kate Glazier, and you're connected to positive news, the Hope Rises movement, and also the amazing things that you're doing on your podcast. And when I heard your story, and what happened with your husband, Mike, and how you, instead of kind of laying down in the moment, you rose up in the moment, and you realized that it was bigger than you and bigger than the grief you're going through. And there's different stages of it. Thank you for being here, because I know we're going to cover a lot of tough topics today, for myself, for yourself, for the audience that has gone through loss, especially of a close loved one. And we're still in the pandemic, and there's a lot of people who lost loved ones to COVID. And I got two close family members that I lost to COVID. And, it's a situation that a lot of times people, when there's hardships, whether it's a divorce or a family member or a sickness or something, it's really natural to kind of try to run away from it and really be in grief almost alone, because you don't want to show that. And so this show is to open that up and allow people to get some of those resources and help. And so thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. People can connect with you. Your website is smtraphagen.com. We'll have that on the screen here if anyone's tuning in on YouTube. If you're listening, don't worry about writing that one down. It is in the show notes. Again, it's smtraphagen.com. That's Shannon's website. And also she's on Facebook, Instagram, all of that's clickable. Where else would you like people to tune in to catch you?
The podcast website is the Game On Glio podcast.com.
Okay.
And that's where they can find updated blogs and any podcast episodes.
Awesome. Yeah, you do a wonderful job with your podcast. I didn't know this. I don't know if it came up in our first conversation, but you're a trained professional, a radio host personality. I mean, it's not your first time in front of a microphone. You're well-versed. You do a great job. I've seen a few interviews that you've been in and some of the content that you've created yourself. So no pressure here. Obviously you're more trained in being on the microphone than I am. A lot of this is self-taught. I'm usually behind the camera. So, appreciate it. Any tips and tricks that you want to share with me, feel free. So are you ready to dive in?
I'm ready to dive in. Sure.
Yeah, we talked about it just a second ago. The Game On Glio podcast, one of your initiatives, you're making an impact. You're serving the glioblastoma community. And I think it's admirable. Like I said, as bittersweet as it is, it's also uplifting and inspirational. It really is to your audience, to myself. And let's give, a shout out to your late husband, Michael, his battle and how his story is inspirational to what you do each and every day. So let's talk a little bit about Glio, if you can, and just kind of how it's heavy on your heart and how this movement started for you.
Well, it's interesting. For as much radio work and television work and stuff that I've done in the past, I'd never really given any consideration to podcasting before. And after Mike was diagnosed, my sole focus was just trying to save his life, trying to give him as many years as possible. The first thing you're told when somebody's diagnosed with brain cancer, and it's not just glioblastoma, GBM, which is the abbreviation for glioblastoma, is basically end stage. That's the highest you can go with a brain tumor, with a cancerous tumor. And it usually means that by then it's a stage 4. It's a glioma that's really grown. So when you get that diagnosis, the first thing, I remember standing in the ER and walking outside of his room. He had a private room in the emergency wing. And I remember going out and standing in the hallway and trying to wrap my head around what they were telling me. He was so out of it. I don't think he fully understood what was going on yet. And so I was on the phone with a doctor I knew, a neuro-oncologist at Johns Hopkins University. And I was kind of giving him the rundown of what I was being told. And it was like midnight. It was middle of the night. He answered his cell. And I just said, what am I looking at? What is he looking at? What does this mean for us? And he's like, maybe he's got 3 to 5 years. And I remember.
You guys are young. Like your husband was how old at that point?
44.
Yeah. 44.
He was 44. I was 43. Yeah. So, when you hear, maybe they've got 3 to 5, like you go numb. Like my whole body was shaking. I didn't really know what to think at that point. So, it's really a race against time, and trying to figure out what you can do. And he only made it about 14 months. He passed away at 45 years old. And after he died, the first few months were really just me trying to grapple with how I was going to cope with getting on without him after he'd been part of my life for 20 years, nearly 20 years. And then the second question was, what am I going to do with all of this? Like, how do I need to find some purpose and meaning in everything that I just lost, because it wasn't just him. We had 3 miscarriages. We had to walk away from an adoption that we were this close to getting, to picking up our little girl when he was diagnosed. So the brevity of the amount of loss that we had gone through was just staggering. And so all I could think about was, I need to find some purpose in all of this. And that was actually when I started having some ideas about the podcast. And my primary driver for it was the fact that there is so much information out there about brain cancer, but most of it is really heavy-handed and fairly negative. And for as many foundations as there are that are out there, you still have to, you're asking a caregiver or a patient to dig through and weed through all of these resources and all of this information and read a ton of information to figure out what could be a good fit for them or where they could get extra help and answers.
And think about this too, just to interject. It's like, sure, on top of all that, not many people, if you give them resources, are always going to dive into it with the things going on in life. But imagine being in that headspace and that, that you're dealing with all of that, the stress, the grief, the everything that's going on, the what ifs, the how am I going to get through life, the financial burdens, all the stuff that's going on, the real, very real life situations being handed to you. And then it's like, okay, now you got to go do your research project too. And maybe when you get your 15 minutes with a doctor, you can ask him some of these questions, and chances are it's going to be, this is not a knock on doctors, but they have limited time. And when you bring resources to a doctor, my experience, and you say, hey, I researched this and this and this, and then you kind of asking them questions, many times it's a very defensive conversation. So, so you're saying you didn't feel there was the resource, that one that you created. You said, this isn't out there. I want to
Yeah.
create this. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there really isn't. And, what better way to allow doctors a platform, and clinical trial experts and neuro-oncologists and patients and caregivers a platform where they can just talk, and they can talk in layman's terms, and they can talk about their journey and their path and what they're going through and what doctors are trying to do. And, a lot of the stories that are coming out from doctors are their frustration, that they're on the front lines of this. They are fighting along us, along the caregivers, along with the patients. They want to cure. They want to find better treatment options for the patients just as badly as we do. And so when they're able to get real in a very personal setting and they're able to just talk, then it gives a patient and a caregiver clarity. It gives them intimacy, and it allows them to hear a story from a professional and then really decide, hey, I want to reach out to this person, or hey, that clinical trial sounds like it could be a good fit. And then they have the information at their disposal, instead of trying to weed through scientific papers or, distill a bunch of very scientific information, then take it to their doctor in the hopes that maybe their doctor will listen when they ask questions. So
it's way more consumable. It's way more consumable. It's conversational. It's educational, but without the burden of, you need to read 18 chapters and hope that you retain some of this in a tough time, where you could go back and press play on a podcast. You can listen to it. You can fast forward 30 seconds. You can go back 30 seconds.
And it's real. It's real. When you don't get to hear the doctor's passions, when they're writing a paper on something or putting something on a website. With this, you get to hear, how they really feel about it, along with the patients and caregivers. And it allows everybody to realize that they're not alone. It makes people feel included in the fact that we're all in this fight together.
You're getting them outside of their day-to-day too. Like, imagine, I don't know how exactly it works with doctors, but I know now I recently stopped at my chiropractor. So I'm just going to use this as an example. I know when I was there and he was working with me, I could hear him because of the hallway and the different rooms. There's like 12 different rooms in this hallway. He was literally going from one to one. He'd set someone up. He'd get them relaxed. He'd go do work on the next person and the next person. And he's going, and that's really how any doctor is. They're just going, they have their 15, 20, 30-minute sessions all planned out for the day. So to take some extra time to talk to you in a conversational way with their guard down, it's not the time and place. But when you get them on the show, they're coming there with an open heart. They'll share some personal stories, right? They'll give you some, they'll open their heart to you. They'll give you that energy that is what you're looking for. So I think that's beautiful. What I'd like to do is lead that into now the stage of after loss and after grief and after the heaviness of that and the devastation of losing your husband. Came 3 things, and it's actually part of your blog. And I'd like to talk about each of them individually: grace, guidance, and gratitude. And how have each of those helped you with healing from the heartache of this loss?
Well, I can say right out of the gate that I'm still healing. It's been 15 months. So, I mean, I've only just started putting some of his stuff away. I mean, his sneakers are where he left them before he got really sick. His stuff is still, everything that he had on his nightstand by our bed is still where it was. So that journey, everybody has to take their own time walking through this process. The grace of it for me is that I didn't realize how I knew I had a lot of inner strength. I didn't realize how much strength I had inside me until this happened. And the grace of having that, knowing that I had that kind of strength, honestly, is what helped me launch into the podcast and, the LLC that I'm creating and raising money for foundations and being an advocate and a voice, and having that voice for others, having that type of empowerment is something that I never could have imagined. And that kind of leads into the gratitude. I'm not grateful for how everything transpired, but because of it, I'm now doing what I'm doing, and I'm doing the work that I'm doing. And I'm talking to people in Peru, in Australia, in Ireland, in England, in the Midwest, in Georgia. I mean, I've heard stories from people all across the globe that I never would have heard from before. And I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that they're allowing me to share in their stories, and that my story is helping them. The guidance piece of it is really my support system and my faith. You know, everybody's journey is different, and everybody gets their strength from different places. For me, and it was something that was true of Mike and I, we were very faithful individuals. We prayed a great deal when he was diagnosed. And a lesson I learned throughout the course of it, I remember, and I speak about this in one of the episodes very briefly early on, that it was probably February. I think it was the end of February in 2020. So right before the pandemic had hit, or officially had hit. I remember we were laying in bed one night, and he was actually doing pretty well at that point. He was fairly stable. There was no evidence on his most recent MRI. So things were going okay. Yeah. But I was so overwhelmed and I was so scared. And I remember waking up in the middle of the night. It was 2:00 in the morning. And I just rolled over and I was staring at him, and he was sound asleep. And all I could think about was how I couldn't lose this man. I couldn't lose him. And so I went outside at 2:00 in the morning. I bundled up, I went outside, and I stood there and I was just praying. And I got down on my knees and I just said, you can take the babies, you can take everything else, but please, please, please spare his life. And he couldn't. And so it was this lesson, and I had read this in a book later on, that, you know, we all try to bargain. We all try to reason away things, and we draw a line in the sand. But that line is always going to get crossed, because ultimately that's life, right? We want to have control, and we don't have control of things in this life. And the pandemic is a perfect example of that. And it scares people. And so my guidance comes from my inner faith and the fortitude I have in believing that everything happens for a reason, as often as that is said by so many people. I truly, truly rely and believe in that statement, that there are good things on the horizon for me, for as much as has been taken away from me, and that I have to hang on to that. I have to hang on to my faith, and that's what guides me. And so those three pillars are really what have sustained me. And it's what I use to help guide others, because without those three things, I probably wouldn't be sitting here right now.
I have chills talking to you right now, because I didn't know how it's only been 14 months, you know, and that his struggle was a 3 to 5 year window that ended up being 14 months. So there's that. And the fact that you're here able to articulate this and just give your heart today. Thank you so much for doing that, because you're helping people out. You're helping, I think, yourself and myself in this, because it's good to have these conversations, right? But also the fact that after a short time, little over a year, you're able to say and reflect that you surrendered, and that you're barter with God, which we've all, at least I could tell you, I've been there. Hey, God, I'm good. I've done this, man. Like, I'll do even more. Like, you just tell me, put me in position, let me know, give me the sign, whatever you need. And, but it's not on his time and his plan and his story for us. And, it's hard, because it's like, well, why did Mike have to go to be part of the story? Couldn't anything else happen? And we don't always know the answers to that. And you're not going to know that as soon as today. You may not know that 5 years from now, but it's amazing that you're saying, but I know that there's a reason, because everything happens for a reason. And I think the takeaway, and some of my regular listeners are going to know what I'm about to say, but that things happen for us, not to us. And it's just a mentality. It's not easy when we're dealing with loss. It's probably the one that's like, I don't know, Mike, I don't know if that's going to make sense here, because you're saying that my husband passed away and that happened for me. How does that ever seem to make sense? What I'm saying, and I'm not even trying to educate you here, this is just to help out the audience if possible. It's a mentality of, Mike passed away. That, Shannon, you can't change it. You're not able to physically change it. It happened. Nobody in your close connections can change it. God didn't change it. Whether he couldn't. I mean, I'm not arguing on any of that. I'm just saying it didn't. There's no change. That happened. Right. The thing that can change is how you react now to it going forward. And it's okay for people to go through grief and have these different stages of acceptance. And it takes time, and it takes professional help, and it takes podcasts like yours. But it also takes someone to willingly open up and say, how can I take this and now make things better because of it? Because Mike is now gone and we're not able to change it. You created this podcast. You've written these beautiful stories. You've kind of come on shows like mine to open up and help people out. So I want to encourage people, when you're going through it all, know that somewhere there's this line of hope. There's this line of uplifting spirit that you can have that's there. And if you use that same energy that can be turned negative, because you feel that energy, it's like a ball in your stomach. If you take that, you can also, a ball of energy, you roll it downhill, it has power too. So if it's coming uphill at you, you can turn in a different direction. You've done that. And we're going to talk more about how you've done it in your story. I do want to take a quick break. What I'm going to do, because we're a little short on time today, is I'm actually going to sandwich our ad break. We're going to do them back to back. So we're going to talk about Social Chameleon. That's my company, our podcast production company. We're going to do a quick timeout to hear about Social Chameleon, and also Navigator Bookkeeping. That's our bookkeeping services that we use. Shout out to Nate over at Navigator Bookkeeping. And I'm going to give you a little personal story on why I love them. We'll take a quick timeout and be right back with Shannon.
Hey guys, it's Mike. I'd like to give a proper shout out to Navigator Bookkeeping. Look, for a long time, I ran my business without really understanding the full financial picture. I used my gut and my bank account balance to make decisions, which led to some poor choices and constant stress over my business's finances. I knew something needed to change. At the beginning of 2021, I made a decision that helped pave a more clear path for my business. I started working with Navigator Bookkeeping. Since then, my bookkeeping has been handled for me. I now understand the full financial story of my business, making important financial decisions much easier now, and it helps me plan for where my business is going. I highly recommend giving Navigator Bookkeeping an opportunity to help your business. Check them out at navigatingyourbooks.com. Again, that's navigatingyourbooks.com. It's time to know the full financial story of your business. Podcasting is a great way to engage with your audience and stay consistently relevant. The only problem is you don't have the time or desire to produce your own show. You simply want it done for you, and that's where Social Chameleon comes in. All you need to do is press record and upload the files. We'll handle the rest. From planning, production, post-production, distribution, and digital marketing, we have you covered. We realize that times are tough and funds are tight, and Social Chameleon believes in building supportive business relationships. By clicking on the link in this promo, we'll provide you 7 free podcasting tips to get started, as well as a free 30-minute online consultation. This is the perfect opportunity for entrepreneurs, keynote speakers, industry experts, influencers, and anybody who has a personal brand. With Social Chameleon, we help you build a brand that is out of this world. We're ready and waiting, so what are you waiting for? Click on the link to get started today.
All right, we're back in action with Shannon Traphagen. If you guys want to connect with her, all of her social media and her website's clickable in the show notes. I also have it up on the screen here. If you're looking and watching this on YouTube, you can see her website right here and also her social media. So connect with Shannon, follow her story closely. I know she's somebody who's putting amazing content out with the purpose for it to serve you, the audience. I know that she agreed to be on the show today. If she could help one person, she wants to be here to do it. Same thing with me. I do these episodes every week. And if I know I'm helping one person, then I'm serving my purpose. We want to be able to let people know that it's okay not to be okay. And that's why Shannon's here today, only 14 months after the passing of her husband. So let's get right back to Shannon's story. I promised that we'd open up a little bit more about it and some of the books that she's written. She's an international writer, guys, and she's penned so many great stories and blogs and books, popular articles like Holiday Traditions with 3 Chefs. Talk about that. And also A Lake Forgotten. Seriously, Shannon, you're incredible. And so I've read actually a few pages of each of those, kind of the previews, if you will. I look forward to reading the whole thing. Is this something that you've had a gift for a long time for writing, or is this something that has been inspired kind of over the last couple of years?
Oh, geez. No, I've been writing since I was a kid. If my mom were sitting here, she would tell you that I used to write stories about pet pigs. And then she actually gave me one of my notebooks one year. It was that pink paper with the green lines that went across it when we were younger.
Mm-hmm.
And I would fill the whole notebook with stories. So it's something that I've dreamt about doing, being a writer, being a speaker. I've longed for it for a really long time. And when I studied in my undergrad and when I did my master's degree, I was just so scared to take the leap at that time. And it was really when I started writing my first novel that I published in 2019. And for those who have read it, the second one is forthcoming. I swear to God, it's just the last couple of years have been a bit tough.
It's you have it set up as a trilogy, right?
It's a trilogy, yeah. So there's 2 more books, and I'm this close to being done with the second novel now.
Finding Morgan is right over your right shoulder.
Yes.
Right?
So Finding Morgan is the book that's out now. Finding Faith is the second book in the trilogy. And it was actually my late husband, Mike, who pushed me. I was working full time and I was writing on the side, and this idea had come to me and I started putting pen to paper. And when he read the first few chapters, he kind of looked at me and he said, "Babe, this is what you need to do." And he was a car guy. He read magazines, he read car blog sites. He didn't read fiction novels. So for him to read that and then look at me and be so invested in the characters, and he was just my biggest champion.
I could tell. I got a sneak peek of a couple of pages, and I'm not surprised that you said like you've been have a love for writing. Writing as an art form. Some people just write to get a story out, and some people, the way they tell the story and the way that they set people up and the characters. The one thing I'm wondering is, I know it's fictional, but is Morgan based on a character, either part of yourself in some ways, or someone that you've known, or maybe you heard part of a story and that gave you a spark?
I think she's really her own individual. She's her own character. There are bits and pieces of her that come from personal experience. So her anxieties, her low self-esteem, those were things that I personally had experienced. When I was a kid, I had been bullied a bit and had some low self-esteem. And, I have dealt with my own anxieties and panic over the years. So there were elements and pieces that were kind of incorporated into that. But in general, she really is her own character. But I mean, that's, when you're writing, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, you take elements of what to build your story and to build your characters. So, yeah. And, I'm working on a book that talks about my journey with Mike and our love and our life together. So,
That's awesome.
I'm
looking forward to reading that as well. So just to give a little bit of the story away, not to maybe, if you want to give the ending of the part 1 here away, you can. But I know, kind of reading the synopsis of the book, it's Morgan's dealing with emotional abuse, right? She flees London to go to America, and then she quickly has this whole new life story that she's kind of working through. Everything's changing rapidly. It seems really intense. Mm-hmm. Again, without giving away the ending, unless you want to, what would you say some of the key messages are of that story? And it's the Le Fay series, right? Like, what are some of the key messages you're looking to get across with that?
So it really, it ties in a lot of English and Irish folklore and mythology, which I love because there's a lot of history in there too. And I think the biggest thing that people can take away from it is that, the name and the title kind of gives you a sense of the direction of the book. It's Finding Morgan is all about her finding herself. And it seems to be a bit apropos for me right now, given that there's some journeys that she has to face in fairly early on in book 1 that I have now had to personally face. And I don't know if it was foreshadowing. It's very eerie because I started writing that book in 2016, 2017, didn't publish till 2019. And it was published a few months before Mike was diagnosed. So she goes through a lot of loss and she has to really work hard to figure out who she is. And it's just eerie that is now the journey that I am on, and didn't know that when I was writing that book. and finding faith. And the title of the second book is just that. It's needing to find something to hold on to as she walks this really dark and ominous path with a few people that she's putting her trust in to help her navigate a really tough road ahead.
Have you ever considered that maybe turning it into a screenplay or doing that at some point, or do you want to kind of get the trilogy written first and then talk about it?
I would love it. I've had a number of people say that to me. Anytime I can get, I think it's such a great storyline. I think it would be a great movie.
Oh yeah. Characters that come from like one environment to a totally different environment have to kind of figure it out. And there's a lot of emotional strain there. And obviously like the setting could just make for a beautiful, like storytelling, visual storytelling. Yeah. And then character arcs are obviously what gets people tuned in and stay until the end. So the story is extremely well written, but also it has it all. All the elements to a great story are there. And it's an interesting one. So I think that it could absolutely, like, even if you did one of them as a movie and maybe then that picked up and people were into it as much as they are the book, then you can go and do part 2 and part 3, and that could be part of your legacy. I think that's super cool.
Yeah. It's been mentioned a few times. I even had a doctor recently that was on the podcast say, have you ever had any conversations with Netflix or anyone about, putting a story, like a lifetime story together of your and Mike's life and everything that happened? And I'm like, you're the third person that's mentioned that. So
that was also on my mind when I said it. Like, obviously Finding Morgan is this really great story that you wrote, this fictional story. And interestingly enough, there's these common themes now that you're experiencing in your own life. I think that's kind of interesting, is like, if there was a behind the scenes video that showed like the fact that the writer had some of these common situations going on, but also, your story with Mike and how you've overcome that and his situation with Glio and dealing with that loss, but also the things that have come from it. Like I said, that uplifting part of the story. I think that in itself could be a documentary. Hey, look, you have this motto. I saw it. I think I found this on your website. It's never say never and never walk away. Right. That's right from you. So what would you tell the busy mom or dad right now? Could be anybody really, but they're balancing so many things, and they're contemplating launching a podcast like you did, and they're contemplating writing a book like you have many times. They say they don't have the time or energy towards it. Understandable. Maybe they're going through the grief situation as well, but they have this heart tug. They're like, oh man, I feel this purpose, this mission, got something I'm called to do, but they have every reason underneath the sun to not do it. What would you tell that person right now?
Trust your gut. When your heart is being tugged that hard at something, and it's this nagging voice that keeps telling you, God, I really want to do this. I really should do this. I can't stop thinking about this. Don't walk away from it. Even if it's taking baby steps and doing something small towards it each day, like coming up with an outline or doing some research to figure out what it would take to put a podcast together, even if it's just 20 minutes or half an hour, if it's putting pen to paper and setting a timer at 9:00 at night, the kids are in bed, the work is done, dinner is done, husband's doing the dishes or what have you, other way around, just set the timer. And even if it's 20 minutes to half an hour, just start jotting down ideas or start narrating some type of story. It doesn't have to be perfect and you don't have to spend a ton of time. But just taking little steps and having things on the fridge. We actually had a vision board at one point, and I found that really helpful for me. I would cut out pictures of things that I wanted to accomplish, and we would put them up on a vision board, and we put little sayings up on the fridge to remind us that not to give up, not to walk away from certain things. And I would walk by and I would see that, and it would remind me that, the more scared I am about something, the more fearful I am, the more I need to walk towards it. And so for anybody, if the pandemic has taught us anything, it's that busyness, we can't be busy anymore. Life is just way too short. We need to make time for the things that matter. And if our inner voice, if our inner intuition, our inner gut is telling us we have to do something, and it's really tugging at us, don't walk away from that, because it's never going to go away, and for as hard as the journey can be, I mean, doing a podcast and coming up with finances and writing a book and trying to get attention for it. And it's not an easy journey. It can be a very difficult path to walk. And I've had the universe lately actually make decisions on my behalf that I was not ready to make. It pulled the trigger for me in some things that I was not ready for. And that's just the way life goes. So, I think it's important for people to follow whatever their dream is, even if it's something on the side, even if they do it in little baby steps or small steps, and make sure you have the support behind you.
Yeah. If you guys are listening and not watching, you're missing out on my big smile, because as Shannon's telling me that, she's so spot on. That's such good advice. Go back and listen to that again if you need to, because there's so many excuses, and they're very valid. I mean, I have a daughter, right? I'm a single dad at this point, and so she's between her mom's house and my place, and back and forth, and that even becomes a lot, balancing that and everything. And that I have one child. I have a friend who has 8 kids. I don't know how he even breathes or gets to be able to go to take a bathroom break, because he's got 8 kids pulling at him, him and his wife. So it's one of those things that, just to hear you say, do a little bit at a time. If you want to write a book and you think that's going to take too many months, too many years, and too much time, and you kind of write it off, no pun intended, but you say, I'm not going to do it because it's too big of a task. Well, that is already, that's given up, really. And it's also not listening to that heart tug. Like you said, listen to your gut. And I think it's beautiful to say, hey, you don't have to write the whole story tonight. Kids are in bed. Don't watch Netflix for a half hour, and just let your heart talk to you. Let some of those words hit the page, noodle them down. It doesn't have to be great. And that's when magic happens. My coach, shout out to Dr. Jamil, one of the things he always tells me to do is schedule time with myself. Literally, if I'm scheduling an hour for Shannon today, I could schedule a half hour for Mike today, right?
And it's so important. I mean, I have a mentor, a writing mentor, who Jane Friedman, and I'll give a shout out to her because I adore her. And she was always in my corner the minute I started writing and started this path. And one of the things that she had told me, she gave me 2 pieces of advice. The first was, don't write, especially when it comes to the writing arena, don't write to make money. Don't write to be famous. Write because it's something you have to do, because it's in you, and the rest will fall into place. And the second piece, and this speaks to anybody who wants to do anything, if you're too afraid of failure and you decide you're going to stop, the problem with that is that you may have stopped right before you succeeded. You think of people like Nikola Tesla, and they try and try and try, and then eventually you just give up or you let go because you're so afraid of failure, or you're so done with the rejection, but you were this close to success and you didn't even know it. So you never know when that tipping point is going to happen, and you just can't give up. You have to continue pursuing what's in your heart.
Michael Jordan, Thomas Edison, they said the reason for their success is because of their multiple thousand failures. Jordan says, it's because all the shots I missed and the confidence I continued to have to move forward through it is what allowed him to have a long career and have the right mentality. Edison says, it took 10,000 times for that light bulb to finally turn on. He never gave up. Once I finally scheduled time with myself, the thing is, when that allows my heart to be happy, not to sound like this, hey, man, you got to get all happy. But no, it's true. When you're in your element and you're doing the things, you're serving the purpose. It could be having a phone call. It could be doing something at your church. It could be whatever it is. Everybody knows what their thing is that they enjoy doing. When you go do that, you may be stressed. I got all this stuff I need to do. But even a half hour with yourself, just feeling that energy. Now your next call, or taking the kids to soccer, or whatever you got going on, karate, all these multiple things, you're now doing it with a different energy, because you feel like, hey, I'm being Mike. I'm myself today. I'm not only a task taker. I'm not only a item doer. You look at your things. I got to do 47 things today. You do me, go to bed. That's not really purposeful. But if you do a couple of things that you feel driven to do, write 1 chapter of your book, and that just gets you feeling like $1 million. It's going to give you the energy to go through for everything else. I think that's great advice from you. You're killing it here with just giving the audience so much to think about and to really wrap their heart around. Also, let's share a little bit of your Buffalo love here. I know you're the associate publisher. Is that still accurate, of Buffalo Healthy Living magazine?
No, not anymore.
Okay.
I spent 7.5 years there. I finally left. Yeah.
Okay. So, but still, I mean, obviously health is something that you are tied around. Like it's something super important to you. The trifecta is diet, exercise, sleep, right? Those are the big three. Can you give us maybe 3 simple daily tips? Maybe pick one for each category. So like a diet tip, maybe an exercise tip, and a sleep tip for us to think about as we go forward.
Sure. So sleep for me is a big thing. And anybody that knows me will tell you I love my sleep, even when I don't sleep very well. I always tell people try really hard to get at least 8 hours of sleep, because it really does make a difference. A lot of people, if they can squeeze in 6.5 hours of sleep, they think they're doing great. And then they'll just play catch up later on. But our bodies need sleep. I mean, even for brain function, it really makes a huge difference to be able to allow the brain to rest. And putting devices away when you're getting ready to go to sleep. Like, I don't have a TV. We've never had a TV in our bedroom. I keep my phone near me now just because I use a sleep app. I use it's called Snoozecast, and I use that to help me fall asleep sometimes. So it's really important to just have things be really quiet, and to try to create a peaceful energy when you go to sleep. For exercise, really, it's so important to, I work from home a lot, as I'm sure you do, and so many others that I know now. And we can tend to sit for a long period of time. So, scheduling things that allow us to get up and move, even if it means going up and down the stairs like 6 or 7 times, to get in a little cardio when it's not, 20 degrees outside, taking a quick walk during lunch break for half an hour. For me, the big thing has been I've always been very sporty, very athletic. So doing different sports and different activities for me. I'm a huge cyclist. So during, warmer weather, I'm out on the bike as much as I can. I row, I do crew, West Side Rowing Club. And so that's very active for me. So just anything that gets the blood flowing and the body moving. I have a friend that does cross-country skiing, and they're desperately trying to get me to do cross-country skiing right now. But that's good cardio. It's, good to do in the middle of winter. So, don't use the cold weather as an excuse. Even if you're in the house, just do something. Lifting weights, sitting on an exercise ball for a little bit. For me, diet is, I'm very careful with what I drink. So, if I do have a glass of wine or a couple of beers or something, it's not all the time. It's not every night, so I'm very careful about, how often I drink alcohol, and I'm very conscientious about what I eat. I don't eat vegetables every single day. I'm desperately trying to, but I am very conscientious of trying to get in at least 1 serving of vegetables every day. Not eating as much white bread and white flour and pastas and stuff, even though I'm Italian and that's hard to do. But, just trying really hard to be, staying away from the fried foods and the grease, and, trying to make dinners for yourself, or, prepare some meals ahead of time, even if it's chaotic with the kids and you have a crazy, crazy hectic schedule. Even those simple little changes can make such a huge difference, and then save your, the eating that you want to do for, Saturday nights, or Fridays and Saturdays. And those would be my biggest recommendations is, because doing that alone, I mean, and drinking tons, I drink a lot of water. I make sure I have a lot of fluids in me during the day. So those little things can make such a huge difference.
I think that's a great theme in this podcast interview. I didn't intend on it to happen, and I didn't know you were going to go there with it. But huge takeaway today for those note takers out there, myself included, is small changes add up to big change, right? And you're not going to tackle the whole thing all in one sitting. And that's for your happiness. Like, hey, for me, it's playing the drums. Do 15 minutes a day, and then eventually a half hour. Maybe you can get yourself into an hour or something. If it's someone who I love to read too, it makes me feel really good when I read. It's new information. It's time investing in myself. Feels good. Just like a 15-minute workout.
Plus it allows your brain to disconnect. It allows you to just disconnect for a few minutes. That's when I go rowing, when I'm out on the water, I'm not thinking about anything.
Yeah.
My brain
You're
is
in the
just
zone.
in that moment. Yeah.
And it's not, you're not out there for the whole day. I mean, sometimes probably, but like, it's a great thing for people to remember that just do these little things that adds up. Start to go to bed 15 minutes earlier instead of saying, I need 2 more hours of sleep. Do like 15 minutes at a time and you'll get there. Super,
Yep.
super strong advice. We're going to wrap up with this. Obviously, you're a multi-time author. And if you've listened to the show multiple times, you know this is coming. So it's not a curveball. Answer it however it comes out naturally. But I think this will give us a good idea of where you're at and where you're looking to go. You're the author and protagonist in your own life story, right? You get to write the ending. God willing, you live a long and prosperous life. You're looking back, you're reflecting on it, and you get to define your legacy. What would that be?
Honestly, my legacy, if I could look back and look over what I've done, if somebody were to say, she made all the difference in my life, that's what truly matters to me. If I can help or make change or give inspiration and hope to just one person that is going through a really difficult time or a traumatic event, and continue to do that until I'm however old I am, that's what matters to me. I just need to continue putting forward the best that I am for others, and to be as selfless as I can be, and to give as much of my heart to the world as I can, to inspire others. And that's all that truly matters. And if I can accomplish that, then I think I would make Mike really proud. And I want to be able to get up to heaven and have him say, you did good.
Yeah.
You did good.
Yeah. And little self-love for yourself here to reflect on it. You're doing many of the things you just said, if not all of those things in some capacity already. So it's one of those, like, continue to keep the energy flowing. You've already done so many amazing things in the last year, going through the tough losses and, the different roller coaster of emotions you've been going through for more than a year now, a couple of years of like it being a real situation, to Mike passing away, to now getting yourself through this and continuing to help others through it. So you're doing it, your legacy is being written. And I can tell that when I said that, it wasn't the first time you thought about it either. I could tell that you're actively looking to put your best foot forward. And also, when you do well, other people thrive, because that's it. You're serving. And so give yourself some love and reflect on that today, and gratitude. I always tell everybody, be great, right? Whatever you do in this world, go be the best at it. I don't care what you're doing. Be great at it. And then be grateful for the opportunity. And you are, I'm grateful to have you here, but you're someone who, anyone who connects with you is, they have to be grateful, because there's just no choice with what you're doing for the world, what you're doing for our local community here in Buffalo, but also literally across the globe now with your social media. So with that, I say thank you so much. Is there any last words you'd like to share before we part?
Everybody's going through a really tough time right now. And the strain and stress of that is there's a lot of fatigue that has set in, and there are a lot of very short tempers and a lot of frustration that's being felt. And so the only thing I could give to everybody right now and tell everybody is to hang in there, to find a little sliver of hope, and to just be kind. Be kind to each other, because we really need each other right now, and we need to be able to lean on each other. And so get rid of the bitterness and the anger, and just try to be kind to people around you, and try to be a support to somebody that you don't know, because it's a domino effect and it'll make a difference.
Yeah. Whether you have $1 million in your pocket or $10, you can still be kind. You can give kindness. And this was one of my favorite interviews, because as hard as I know it was in preparing, like, to be ready for this conversation and on both sides of it, I just appreciate what you shared today. And it's like really hitting home with me, but also just the amazing things you're doing. Like, again, you're incredible. Your mindset is incredible. And I just want to continue to say I'm rooting for you and excited to see your growth through this. And I know everybody who's tuning in who hasn't been following you is now going to start to follow you and follow to see what you're doing. But also the people in your your network. They are grateful for you because of what you provide and give. So thank you for your time today. You have a friend here. Phone is always on. Do not be a stranger. If you ever need anything, give me a shout. And thank you. And, the mic'd up universe out there tuning in, definitely thanks you for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed this.
I'd like to give a huge shout out to everyone for tuning in, especially those who listen all the way to the end to hear this message. Seriously, I appreciate you, and my guests do as well. Giving a quick reminder to subscribe to this show. It's completely free and will allow you to receive notifications when new episodes are released. If you'd like to provide a tip as a gift, you can do so via patreon.com/mic'd-up. It's spelled MIKED up. Patreon.com/mic'd-up. You can give as little as $1 per month or as much as you'd like. Every dollar is greatly appreciated and completely unexpected. Appreciate your reviews and your messages coming in on social as well. Keep them coming. Your feedback is valuable and absolutely means the world to me. You can check out more episodes and content at mic'duppodcast.com. We're powered by Social Chameleon. You can also follow me on Instagram. That's where I'm the most active, and it's at Mike DiCioccio, MIKEDICIOCCIO. Thank you so much for your continued support. You guys know what to do. Be great and be grateful.